Greetings builders, Daniel here and welcome to the part 2 of my top 12 builds for the Settlers of Kalguur League. If you missed the part 1, don't worry, you can find it linked together with the POBs and complete guides for all those builds in the video description. And if this video helps you, please leave a thumbs up to support the channel. Thank you very much and let's get into it! First on 9th place we have the destructive Fire Cyclone Berserker with the Marauder class. This build converts 100% of Cyclone's damage into fire to clear endgame maps like an amazing flame tornado. To list the pros of this build, I would start with the clear speed. With Cyclone you never need to stop moving, and that spin to win feeling is just awesome. This build also has a great single target damage with not much investment. Now to list the cons, the main issue of this build is survivability. Even though this build has many defensive layers, it also needs to stay very close to enemies, which is a vulnerable position. And as a berserker you already take 10% increased damage. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas I recommend investing around 6 divines, otherwise your survivability won't be enough and you'll end up dying a lot. Don't forget that on PoEbuilds.net you can find a list with all the equipment that you need to buy for this build, with direct links for examples being sold by other players. You need 2 mandatory unique items for this build. The first one is the Gamahu's Flame Axe that already converts 60% of your physical damage to fire, grants 20% fire penetration and triggers Molten Burst on hits for a lot more single target damage. Next we also need a Stampede Boots that guarantee that our movement speed is always 150% of its base. This is great because now we can replace the regular Cyclone with Cyclone of Tumult for a lot more damage and area of effect. For clear speed this build gets 9 out of 10. As mentioned before, Cyclone is an awesome skill that never stops moving. You just need to slide through the maps killing everything that gets near. The boss damage is amazing, deserves 10 out of 10. Now with Cyclone of Tumult we have a lot more attack speed to trigger Molten Burst many times and destroy even the biggest bosses in just a few seconds. The survivability on the other hand gets 7 out of 10. Even though this build has a great life pool, permanent fortify, high armor, high evasion and spell suppression, it's always in a vulnerable position, very close to enemies. That might be a little frustrating if you try high tier maps without investing in your survivability. Next, on number 8 we have the smoking hot Infernal Flicker Strike Ascendant with the Scion class. This build uses the unique sword Auto Sacrifice to sustain the frenzy charges needed for you to keep flickering. But that's not any autos flicker build, this one also chills and shocks enemies for a lot more damage, clear speed and survivability. To list the pros of this build, I would of course start with its clear speed. Flicker is just incredibly fast and super cool to play. This build also counts with an amazing boss damage and high survivability. Now to list the cons, the first thing that comes to my mind is that you're always very close to enemies, which is a vulnerable position. Another issue is that you have little control over your character, making it hard on bosses where you need to mind your position or attack the right enemy. As for budget, you can get it destroying early endgame maps with only around 90 chaos. To comfortably advance to yellow maps you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas I recommend investing around 4 divines. We need 2 mandatory unique items for this build. The first and most important is the Auto Sacrifice Sword that allows you to maintain your frenzy charges always up even while flickering. Next we also need the Call of the Void ring that causes your attacks to chill and shatter enemies. This ring might be a little expensive during the first days of a new league, but don't worry, you'll be fine without it while waiting for the prices to drop. For clear speed this build is surely a 10 out of 10. As any other flicker build, this one is also insanely fast, so fast that some players can even play without getting nauseous. The boss damage is great and deserves 9 out of 10. This build achieves high amounts of DPS capable of decimating even the big bosses in just seconds. Now for the survivability I'd only give it 8 out of 10, even though this build still has almost 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion and spell suppression. I had to take 2 points out because they're always very close to enemies. Finally on 7th place we have the amazing Lightning Strike Trickster with the Shadow class. Lightning Strike is an awesome skill that used to be on top of the meta, but went down after a couple of nerfs. Now with the recent buffs, it's back to the top and with more power than ever. To list the pros of this build, I would start with its clear speed. Besides a strong melee hit, Lightning Strike also creates many lightning projectiles that run on the floor, killing every enemy on its path. Besides that, this build also counts with the Trickster Ascendance to be super fast and tanky. It has 7 frames charges for extra damage and speed and a lot of defensive layers. Now to list the cons, the first thing that comes to mind is that this build needs a good elemental call to work properly, but don't worry, it's easy to buy one from other players. As for budget, this build is not expensive at all. You can get it destroying early in-game maps with only around 80 chaos. To comfort with advanced yellow maps, you need to invest around 150 chaos, and for easily completing your atlas, I recommend investing around 4 divines. For clear speed, I'll give this one 10 out of 10. As mentioned before, you have 7 frames charges and a huge effective elusive that grants this build a lot of movement speed. Besides that, Lightning Strike creates many projectiles that run on the floor, exploding many enemies that aren't even close to you yet. The boss damage is also amazing, deserves 9 out of 10. Lightning Strike just received a big damage buff, and this build is an awesome boss killer. For the survivability, I'll give it 9 out of 10. This build has over 100,000 effective HP because of high armor, evasion, spell suppression, fortify, and even a trickster buff that causes you to take 40% less damage. Above all, you are immune to freeze and stuns. And that's it for today, guys. Please check the video description for the other 3 parts of this top 12 Settlers of Kalguur builds. And as always, don't forget to tell me your thoughts in the comments and leave a thumbs up to support the channel. I wish you guys an amazing day. And don't forget to keep building!